known,
Yeah,
but with all the kind of the abundance of information and the newness of a lot of technologies that we're dealing with, these overlapping skills, I'm sure, is very, very important. You should be able to identify the right skills that you need and
correct.
get the right folks. But
Yeah,
while you were talking about the business, and I was just thinking that if business has to prioritize something, it needs to be
yeah,
business risk.
yeah,
And for us to arrive at business risk, we
yeah.
need to know, since we're talking about correlation, we need to know the context.
Right.
So context has been a big thing in terms of how do you interpret the context interpretation so once you have the data, you've structured it correctly, now you're trying to correlate. Now we are at a place where we want to sort of derive actual business risks out
Mm,
of this,
mm,
and for that we'll need to interpret the context very well, like that is coming from these threads, these different patterns that we are trying to derive and
yeah.
things. So how do we actually go about that next step where we
Sure.
have all of this data, we've structured it well, and now we're thinking of deriving actual business risks out of these, because I believe that every business has different things that they'll prioritize, and hence how do
Absolutely.
we go about that?
Sure. So usually, I mean, and this is like an easy, quick win, as we call that, right? Is typically most businesses are scared of audit findings. Yeah.
Thankfully, they
Yeah,
are.
I know.
Is our
So,
bread
right,
and butter is
exactly.
running.
Yeah, especially if you have to fall if you fall in the this thing of SOX, where you have to be compliant with SOX regulations
Hmm.
and therefore ITGC and even SOC 2, right? You are a supplier or a vendor for a larger organization, and there, those they want to know how you are managing their IT systems and their IT infrastructure, etc., and what are the controls in place. So in those scenarios, if you get audit findings, typically also, but I'll tell you, while they are scared of audit findings, a lot of times also what happens, okay, so what? What do you want me to do? Right? That's a typical question. Like I've gone
Yeah.
on a lot of these audit committee meetings, these board meetings, where we've done a cyber assessment and we've said, you are weak here and there. And I'm telling you, in a room full of people who have this immense knowledge on business, right? An immense knowledge of managing large organizations, when you go and tell them that, you are not monitoring all your critical systems, or that, your access governance is seriously lacking because you are not doing a user access review on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, as the case may be. So what?
I think just sorry to stop you there,
No,
but
no, no problem.
it's such a keen observation that you have. This is something that I've heard, and this is like starting from the streets to the castle. You will hear these two words, so what? Your developer will tell you so what. The managers will tell you
Absolutely.
so what.
Correct.
Everybody on the engineering side will tell you so what.
Absolutely.
And of
Yeah,
course, the leadership will tell you so what. So
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
you're so right. You're so right. Yeah, I know. And yeah, you absolutely hit the nail. So when these questions kept coming, and that is when we said, okay, fine, let's take it a step further, right? And so which is why I've taken the example of audit findings, because it's easier for people to relate to. There are obviously other interpretations as well that are available. And for that, so okay, let's say user access review, right? And we've seen a lot of times when you leave a person's access unrevoked, right? And the person, let's say, is able to, there is logic. No, but that person has been thrown out of the system, so they don't have the company laptop. So what if the ID had remained active in my SAP? It doesn't matter, that person is not going to be accessed. You never know. How do you guarantee that? Right? And that is why that is one of these audit findings that I'm telling you, it is, Nilo, it's almost frustrating the amount of times this kind of an audit finding has been coming up. At least in the last 10 years, I have seen this at least 3 times in an organization, and people just don't seem to be learning their
Now
lesson.
we have the example of things like Capital One,
Yeah.
because the AWS and data compromise that happened was through such unrevoked access. But yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, right. So yeah, so the point is, yes, you have, while you have these real life examples, and God forbid you don't want to give those kind of live examples, right? You want to be able to explain to them the business implication and I think now people are scared of data loss. Yeah. So
Hmm.
anything and everything, if you are able to correlate to say, I'm going to lose customer data, or I'm going to lose critical business financial data, and in some cases in a product organization, in a pharmaceutical organization, is that your product before it is launched, or your secret formulae before they are actually put out in the market as a generic
Hmm.
drug, especially in a pharmaceutical kind of an organization.
Your intellectual property is
Exactly.
being,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So, those are the things that people are a little wary of. And that because they know that it correlates directly to my business. So, which is the correlationship that people. So I'll tell you, while earlier I spoke about, statistician and data scientist, that kind of a skill coming in. I think the other skill that we as security professionals will now start having to understand is also getting a little bit of business knowledge, especially in the sector that, let's say, you are possibly working on. If you are a core
Of
IT
course, yeah.
professional, yeah.
Hmm.
So, how does the business operate? And therefore, what is critical for them? Understand that. It's not the vulnerability, but the vulnerability, what will it exploit? It's not the threat, but that threat, if it actually fructifies, and if it is a danger to the organization, which part of the organization, where will it really hit the organization to impact its business? That is the understanding that also we need to start getting in, so that when we tell them so much cyber security related data, because and so let me put it this way. Also, the other thing I see is, uh, when big data came in, and all these organizations started gaining advantage from all that customer related data that they collected.
Hmm.
I think it's time for us cybersecurity professionals to start taking advantage of that. Where, and for the longest time, people have been saying, right, data is the new oil. So why aren't we exploiting, as cybersecurity professionals, the cybersecurity data that we have? The reason is because we are lacking on these two aspects. One is understanding data like a data scientist, and two is understanding what is critical to my business or the client. If you are an IT service organization, for example, or my client, to them, what is most critical as a business is something that I need to understand.